As Jawad drinks, he becomes talkative. We can't find good jobs. We take labor jobs so people won't say we are lazy. He polishes off a bottle of ouzo in short order. His cheeks glow pink. His best friend is beside him, twirling his ever-present prayer beads. Jawad offers to take us to Iraq, and we consider the risks. He doesn't care if he dies. After a few glasses of ouzo and dip, the offer begins to sound more compelling to the rest of us. The poet has arrived with his wife and daughters, who are cutting up a whole chicken and putting it on skewers. The men have lit a fire, and I join them, leaving the women to sit at a distance, talking about men and makeup and marriage, conversations I have heard so many times. The poet is reciting verse as we wait for our dinner. He pours more ouzo in my glass. He says that there will be war between the Kurds and the government. He sees it over the horizon. First thing in the morning, Jawad takes us by taxi to the checkpoint leading to the closest border crossing to Iraq. The border guards are curious about the foreigner. They want to know why we want to go to the neighboring town. There's nothing there but scrap metal, says one. Why are you taking this foreign woman to a scrap heap? I keep telling her that, says my friend Amir. These foreigners are all crazy. So this is just an example of the kind of experience you can't have if you're at the Sheraton. I was also, as I said, I'm very interested in the intersection between people and politics, and at the center of politics in the Middle East is oil. So I wanted to go to the oil regions on the border of Iraq. This is where Iran's great untapped oil fields and tapped oil fields are. And so I went to the city of Ahvaz with a friend of mine. This is a place where temperatures in the summer hit 60 degrees Celsius. So people basically live their lives at night. They play soccer at 3 o'clock in the morning, they work their jobs at night, and then they sleep in the day. This was the first place that I really resented wearing a scarf because it was so hot. This is just showing you how they live at night. So at this point when I was there, the atmosphere was extremely tense. The area is mainly Arab. Iran is a majority Persian country, but there's about 3 to 4% Arab population, and they live in these very volatile oil regions. And also, Ahvaz is right on the border with Iraq, next to Basra. And Basra is right now probably the most violent city in Iraq. And the British were there at the time, and there was a feeling that among the Iranian authorities that the British wanted to stir things up on the Iranian side. That was their suspicion. And a couple of weeks before I got there, a week before, there had been a firebombing of banks and government offices in Ahvaz. So the tension was really high between the police, the intelligence services, which again were everywhere, and the locals. So we spent a lot of time talking to the locals, usually at night. They would sit outside picnicking, smoking water pipes, and so on, and getting to know what their frustrations were, what their lives were like. Again, it was heavy unemployment, no opportunities, and a feeling of being second class to the majority population. While we were sitting there one night, suddenly it was very quiet. All of a sudden people weren't around, and usually people were picnicking there until all hours. Again, a police cruiser pulled up, and the men we were talking to said, "Oh, don't worry, they won't bother us." And within about a minute, one of them had descended into the group, kicked over the water pipe. He was a colonel, and grabbed my friend and threw him down, and grabbed me and put me in the back of the cruiser. So at this point, I was more nervous, perhaps even than I had been around Shireen Abadi. Although I often feel as if the Canadian passport is some help, and it did help a lot that I didn't have a British passport. So I was taken to the police station, as was my friend, and over the next 4 hours they were trying to contact intelligence in Tehran to find out what my files were. Now I had been renewing my visa every month at the foreign ministry in Tehran, and the name of it, I should tell you, is the Disciplinary Force for Islamic Republic of Iran Department for Aliens Affairs, which is it's about as friendly as it sounds. So I was a little bit nervous that they were trying Tehran, but I knew the office was closed, and it was, so they couldn't get hold of anyone. And then, after an hour or so of this, it dawned on them that a woman can't be a spy. And as that realization set in, they started suddenly bringing me glasses of water, and the yelling ceased, and so on. And during that time, I had a young man who was my guard, a soldier from the central Iranian city of Shiraz, which is a beautiful city. And I had a chance to interview him about what he was thinking about the elections in Iran and his hopes for the future. And I ended up getting a lot of information out of him, and he was really feeling quite distraught that I was in this circumstance as well. So I managed to get an interview out of it, and I was released 4 hours later. And so I guess the moral is that everything bad that happens to you in this line of work is good, as long as you get released at the end of it. The last place in Iran that I want to talk about is Bushehr. Again, it's the focus of political discussion. It is the site of the nuclear reactor that's set to go live very shortly. It's being built by the Russians on the Persian Gulf. It also happens to be a fishing village, quite beautiful Mediterranean-style village, where the women wear bright costumes and only the women smoke these long pipes, and you'd see them everywhere smoking them. And so I was very interested obviously interested in the nuclear issue, but also in the population around. And just to give you a little bit of background on the nuclear issue, on the reactor as well at Bushehr, the nuclear program in Iran started in the 70s under the Shah of Iran, who was a US ally. And at the time, under the Ford administration, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld had major security portfolios. Paul Wolfowitz was in charge of non-proliferation, and all of them were eager to sell Iran a full nuclear cycle because they were going to make billions of dollars for American corporations. So by the time I arrived, of course, the same people were feeling quite differently about Iran. And I wanted to go and see the reactor. However, it's very difficult, and I was always concerned about drawing too much attention to myself, which was very challenging. So I had heard that there was a public bus that went into that area. So in the end, I managed to pay 10 cents to take a round-trip tour past the anti-aircraft batteries, past the checkpoints, directly into the nuclear compound, tour around it, and come back out. So, and at the same time, get a chance to see how many civilians were living in that area. There was a sign when I went in that was welcoming the dear guests to the information center, but I thought I was going to say no to the security shakedown and just continue with my own personal nuclear tour. And later on, I had a chance to meet more of the locals, because as I said, what interests me are the people on the ground. And in an event of a strike or an attack on Iran, Bushehr, of course, is going to be one of the main targets, and so will the people that live around it. Now, the Iraqi refugees have been my focus for the last 6 months, since the summer. And here I just want to focus on their story and their dangers, not mine, because the risks that they face are far more serious. And my job in doing this assignment was to explore their situation.